Raising Unicorns!
Harmon Brothers!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Raising Unicorns. Today we have on the podcast the one and only Kaitlin Snow.
There's actually two Kaitlin Snows.
Okay.
The other one is the bad guy in The Flash.
It's time to chat with the legend.
That's legendary.
So tell me a little bit about like your experience when you were working with, Jeffrey and Neil and Daniel back in the Orabrush days about like what we would talk about as a team and how we would modify the content and how we would test that content out and how, like, what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we would reorder things, right, and test them. And the kind of nice thing was we were already in that mindset because the way that like we filmed the Morgan vlog wasn't always linear. So it was like, oh, let's get this and we can throw it in somewhere. And so I think that we were a little like non-discriminate when it came to like gathering certain types of content that maybe people with, what is it called when you're like too close to something, you can't really see that bias. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Like we talk about...
Say you too close to it,
yeah,
right?
the too close to it syndrome, right? Where it's just like you can't, like, you know a little bit too much, right? And so when we see that with clients is like they're just so into their product that they can't like step back and see what other people see. And so I think that was part of it is like we were willing to test anything. Like nothing was out of bounds. It didn't have to meet the script or the way that, like you said, the big guys would play.
Yeah, and I think that's like one thing, like it wasn't confined to a 30-second spot or a 15-second spot, which is like the only placements that you could have on TV. And so it could be very fluid in what it is and what it could become. And I think looking forward till now, I think that the people who are winning are still challenging those norms and challenging assumptions around what good advertising has to look like or feel like or sound like. And they're doing something that's different and offbeat.
I think another thing that helped was like working with Dave Ackerman. Like, to me, he's like a comedian and a performer, like at heart. And so like he would ad-lib stuff. And sometimes those would become like the intro. Right. And it just kind of
with good actors who have good comedic presence.
Yeah, because it elevates the script, right? And like you see some like of the Super Bowl commercials where they have A-list actors, but it's like not any funnier than if you just had a normal person. Like there's some novelty. You're like, oh look, it's Ben Affleck, or oh look, but like it's just not.
But then when you have like a Will Ferrell who can like actually come in and add to it and make it better, you're like, that feels like a Will Ferrell line that he like brought his special sauce to. Right?
Yeah. So
working with good talent.
Yeah, back to that question. I think working with the talent and giving them the option to go off script also helped because it was like there's just kind of some spontaneity that's born that you can kind of capture.
Yeah, and one of the things that we tested so thoroughly back in the day too, like speaking of variables you could change for like intros, like we're with Dave, we just changed the intro. I remember there was a version of the Aura Pup video, which was, for those of you who don't know, the Aura Brush is a tongue cleaner with these little bristles and a scraper that basically cleans all the crevices out of your tongue. They made a version for a dog called the Aura Pup that they put this like kind of beef bouillon kind of like gravy stuff that the dogs, it was like catnip for dogs. And they would just lick this thing till the end of time. And it had like little squeegees on it and the little bristles on it. Yeah. And we filmed, I remember the project file was a disaster. Because we never had planned to have this many permutations of it, but I remember opening it up and doing a bunch of optimization edits on it and like we shot new stuff. We shot it with different dogs. We shot it with different kids. We had all these different like lines that we'd have to film with Austin Craig. And like, we just had so many different versions. But I feel like the lesson that I learned at the Orabrush days is that like, you can't underestimate the power of testing.
And coming back and making it better.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just launch it and you're done, right? Yeah. Especially with that type of content. Yeah.
Well, because you really don't know, like, because before that was what you had to do is you just did it to the very best of your ability and you threw it out into the ether and that was it. And it either passed or failed. And if it failed, it's just like, okay, that campaign sucked and we don't know why. And it didn't work. But now you got this rapid iteration and quick feedback with the amount of people that can see this on digital so quickly. You can test through it. And I remember Kaitlin and I were talking before the podcast. We worked for a time. Jeffrey Harmon worked with the Ron Paul Super PAC. This is when he was running back in 2012. And they were trying to figure out like, because they had all this survey data that was basically saying like Americans, when they understand Ron Paul's policies, actually agree with him on most things, or on a lot more than they actually think. They think libertarian, they're like, oh, you're super far right and crazy. Or like if it's like, oh, you're super liberal on like social issues around drugs, like you want to legalize drugs and prostitution, right? And so they did a bunch of testing where they wrote different persuasive arguments around like his foreign policy, right? And they did different pitch people where they had like there was like a white guy, there was like a African American guy, there was a white woman who would pitch the same script, and they go through 3 different like deliveries and different styles of the script, where one was like more like gentle, one was like hyper informative with tons of facts, one was more aggressive.
With the same script, which is so interesting.
Yeah, so like they'd have like these different variables they could test through, and they spent a ton of money like to test through it. But like I wish I had the actual statistics on me, but I remember seeing the difference between the baseline video of like if we just would have cast and done like this one video and just sent it out, it was the difference in performance for view through was like crazy. I think it was an 80% higher view through rate to completion.
Wow.
So it's way more engaging. And then they did some like post video surveys asking them, how much did this convince you that this was like to change your view on foreign policy? And I'd have to check with Jeff, but it was like huge. Like some of these videos that were big winners, it like moved 25% of people's who watched it up to a certain like point, like 3/4 of it, change their opinion on foreign policy.
Wow.
Which to me, I feel like it speaks to the power of really good copywriting, the importance of having the right delivery and like right vessel to give that message to somebody. And then the amount of variables that are out of your control that if you don't test for or plan for testing, you could be missing out on tons of performance. And I know that's so hard because Ron Paul Super PAC had a ton of money to go spend through that, right? But if you're not maximizing the number of things you can test through on your strategy for your e-commerce or for whatever your platform is, like you're missing out on upside that you could realize. Because even if you have the smallest budget, you can always test small variables, right?
Right, and you don't test everything all at once, right? Like test a variable at a time. Like they didn't
change the intro.
They didn't have 3 different actors and each of them said a different message, right? Like they'd already, I'm assuming, tested into their messaging. Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, they had different messages they were trying to tackle. They were trying to see where they could move the needle the most on these different messages with all these different scripts. So it was quite an undertaking. And I think too, like this is like for an ad agency, we're in a tricky place because sometimes people just don't want to do that. Some people just want to pay for the big video. And even if we push them to do more variations or push them to do that, sometimes they're like, well, don't you guys just make the big videos? And I'm like, yeah, we do. But like the successes come through like solid testing. We make the video itself as polished and as great and as funny and as punchy and as convincing as possible and do as much prep to get it to that point.
Yeah.
But I'm like, even if we launched all of our ad campaigns with the best version that we as a brain trust feel like the best version, we probably have like half the amount of success that we have like as a company, like right now. Like we probably would win half as many times because I feel like that testing is so critical.
I remember testing the Lumi intros and like the Johnny's idea was, at first like stirrups, like a woman, like at a gynecologist's office or something.
Yes.
And as we started like filming, like just blocking it and stuff and thinking about pre-pro, we're like, this might be a little too much, and like so we modified it, but we also made sure like, okay, we can't like put all of our eggs in one basket. Let's make sure other parts of the video can be intros too. And like there was a whole scene in like a yoga studio, like a gym that I think we just eventually cut.
I forgot about that. It was like I thought it was a cycling.
With cycling, yeah. And like there were like whole scenes in there, but it did pretty poorly as an intro. That we were actually like, you know what, like the ad is better without it. Sometimes we've tested the intros weeks before, we launch. And so we were actually able to incorporate that and just be like, okay, this one's kind of like not resonating. Let's just let's
see if we can get something else to outperform it.
Yeah.
And I've shared this example several times, but like the original like intro for Camp Chef was significantly longer, didn't perform nearly as well. Daniel and I cut together like 4 different intros. One of them was just like a ton of sexy food shots. One of it was like the grill god popping straight out, and that was the one that performed super well, was the grill god just coming right out of the grill, like seeing this thing, you're like, what the crap am I looking at? What's going on? I'm curious to know what your take on this of why people don't do this more often. And I'm going to give my 2 cents, and you
Okay.
can tell me what you think. I think it's twofold. I think one, it's super tedious to make sure you have all the components in a script that make it modular, that make it flexible, give you tons of options for hooks, and don't like hurt the long form video that like they want to have on their website
and if you don't start it out that way and you try to fix retrofit it in the end, it's a pain because a lot of people are burning in their graphics, they're exporting color with like 5-frame handles, and they don't have
flexibility.
The flexibility, yeah.
So I think it's that, and then I think too that there's the artist side of things where they're like, well, let's just make it the best video we can. I don't want to like hack it to pieces to get it to be perform. And it's like at the end of the day, our clients are paying us to get performance, right? They are paying for us to get in there and figure out what it performs. And that means if we film, let's say like that Lumi example, Shannon didn't care that we cut out a scene that was probably like tens of thousands of dollars to film and we just hacked it because she didn't care. She was like, I just want it to perform. And the one that performed wasn't that one. So get it out of there. So even if we lost half the video in the testing process, if that meant that our client got like a 5 to 7 ROAS on a project, we didn't care either. We were like, great. Burn that footage. I don't care. As long as it gets some performance.
And it was never, let's do this so it goes viral. It was like, let's do this because we think it's the most intriguing or captivating, but let's also have this thing and let's test them,
Yeah, and that's what I was getting back to, like the different components of how advertising has changed over the years. Like I still see ads that work really well where they're doing, like UGC is an example. We were doing UGC before it was cool because we were using tons of actual reviewers who were funny and engaging with what they had written on Amazon and using that as the kind of UGC section of the video where they would be basically like, listen to all these 5-star reviews from happy customers with the squatty potty or whatever.
Even Aurabrush, we had
that.
people that would brush their tongue and then show you.
We did UGC back in 2012 where we'd ask people to 2011, where we'd ask people to send in videos of them using the Aura brush and demonstrating it in action. So there's all these components that are like part of a persuasive sale that now just take different forms and different styles, and different formats for the different platforms, Like if you went and like took our Easy Ads That Sell course, you would see all these components in advertising. It'd probably ruin advertising for you. So you'd be like, oh, this is an origin story ad. Oh, this is a customer journey ad. Oh, this is a tipping point ad. Or, oh, this is an unboxing video. Like there's very few formats of advertising, or at least persuasive elements that I see in advertising that genuinely surprise me anymore. Mostly because we've just been doing it for so long. And also like we're getting bombarded by hundreds of ads, even on a daily basis. Like the things that convince people, I don't think we're reinventing the wheel. It's just how we're packaging it, right?
Yeah. Their attention span is less, right?
Yeah.
And like they don't want to work like even with the Grill God, even though that was years ago, like they don't want to work to understand this backstory. It's more like, what is this? And there's a payoff pretty quick,
right. One of the things that's kind of interesting is we have companies that want the smaller, shorter content like you were just talking about. It's faster iteration. That's more like, let's go growth hack this thing with really persuasive advertising.
Can you get 60 deliverables by
60
Tuesday?
deliverables, and we'll test through it like really rapidly, right? And then we also have the companies that want to come do big branded pieces that have conversion elements in there. And it's interesting just because we still see both have success. We still see like things like Sashbag absolutely kill it, where they're getting a massive return on their investment. It's just still performing, a year deep into the.
Oh, they ran it for like over 18 months.
Yeah, so like 18 months deep into it, it's still killing it for them, right? So these are big branded pieces that are kind of flashier, sexier, look like more professional. And then we have like, ones that are tiny little videos that we made for a couple $1,000s and iterated on, and they're killing it. So I'm curious to know, what's your favorite big blockbuster hit that you worked on, whether as an editor, as a creative director, and then what's your favorite small blockbuster hit of like, something that was probably like something that cost like sub $5,000 to make?
We did some small stuff for Kizik, which was a lot of fun because you're like, okay, how can you show, it's very demonstrable, but how do you do more than just somebody putting their foot in? And we had like,
I'll tell you how you get pregnant and then you put on the shoe.
Yeah, that's what I did. And
she got pregnant just for the ad.
Just for the ad. So like 7 months before I got pregnant, and I was like, okay, I'm getting ready for the role. So we just like I stepped into the shoe like as I was pregnant, and then I showed like me sitting on the bed trying to bring my foot up, to like put a normal shoe on, and it actually was like a tan shoe and a tan carpet, and it was hard for it to pop. So I did have somebody track my feet and change it to match the pink that they offered, just because I wanted to make sure you could see it, right? But yeah, I remember talking to the creative director like over a year later, and he's like, that ad is like outperformed all of our ads. Like that's like the hero video that we did that was, you know,
still performed well in and of its own right.
Yeah. And it was a quote, you know, of something like, I'm 8 months pregnant and this is a game changer, you know, and it spoke to it. You didn't have to go into laces and da-da-da, but it just like automatically you're like, here is a solution to a problem you have, you know, and people were like, okay, like, thank you, you know,
right.
And it was really quick, and I would sometimes see it on Instagram, which is fun. But yeah, that one, like, it's just so simple.
Straight to the point.
Yeah, and we almost didn't get it.
And
like,
it had a demonstration too, right? That was a big part of it, is just like you saw the pain point acutely. You saw the demonstration of how it made your life easier, just like that.
Yeah. And we actually shot it. I think it was like piggybacking off of another shoot. And we're like, well, we're here, you know, let's get it. So it's like there's all sorts of little things you can like take advantage of while getting the big like showcasey one, right?
Right. And I think that that's like a good example of like just seizing the opportunity of like, let's get one more thing that we could test.
Yeah. And to Mandy Harmon's credit, she was the creative director at the time. She grabbed that. And then I think it was a month or two later that then I started on the smaller ads, and I was able to use that because they used it as like a cutaway in the main video. And so it was like, well, I'm going to use it as the video, you know?
And it turned out to be the video.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Kaitlin, tell me about, the Kizik one was a good small campaign that performed really well. What's your favorite, like, best performing big campaign?
Three that come to mind.
Jeez.
Three that come to my mind are Squatty Potty, The First Lumi, and Sash Bag. What was really cool about Sash Bag, which is the most recent one, is that like it just did a lot. Like there was the long form video, but we wanted to make sure that it worked for different use cases and that it showed lots of different ages of women. So, like, this is a bag for, you know, 30-year-olds and 60-year-olds. Also, like, different sizes of women, because some would be like, oh, I'm really petite. Will it be too big? Or, like, I'm large. Will it still fit? And stuff like that. So there was just a lot of variables. And I actually came up with the initial kind of idea that sparked the concept, which was, like, a woman in a, like, wetsuit with, like, flippers in a store, like diving into her purse.
Oh, yeah.
You know, was kind of
the abyss that's the purse.
Yeah. And then one of our writers, Ryan, who's also a creative director, he kind of went off that and did the diving into the purse, but instead it was like the purse had like kind of Jumanji-esque things going on, where later it like wraps around a woman, you know, or they're stuck, or it's super heavy. So it's kind of like, you know, an exaggeration in like physical form.
Yeah.
So that's what that ended up being. So that was fun to kind of like to see that genesis of the idea and then how it was implemented, to see like all the different short edits that we did and like what ones did well. Mm-hmm. And like one that was surprising was she's just rolling down a window and she goes like, I love my sash bag, you know? And that's this biker, he's like, that's great. Me too. And you like zoom out and like this like biker dude is wearing one. Yeah. The Harmon Brothers content, which was this campaign and the campaign before, reduced their like overall cost per acquisition for a customer by like 10%. But like if you were to compare ours versus theirs, it was like at least like a 20% difference. So it was doing really well and bringing in a lot of new customers, and they were able to just have like a broad audience and just like leave it for everybody so they could get new people into their ecosystem.
It wasn't just harvesting from fans that they'd already won over customers.
No.
It was like brand new. Because that's what I remember you talking to me about that like kind of case study. Because a lot of people are like, oh, like if I'm retargeting my current audience or, you know, or retargeting my audience who I already know loves the product, I'm getting a great ROAS. But like outperforming all their content that they had previously and getting the acquisition cost down by like 10 to 20%. On new audiences is incredible. Like that's like
just
a
cold audience.
That's like every brand's dream. Of like, I can lower my CAC and get new customers. Sign me up,
and
please.
their customers are really good at like lifetime value and reoccurring purchases. Yeah. So it was just like,
which is so odd for like a more expensive like accessory, right?
You gotta have the different colors.
I get that. Maybe that's because I'm not a woman, but like it's just surprising to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, I love being part of that success and being like privy to that. Like, and now like it's exciting for the founders. Like it's super exciting to see Chapbooks do awesome. It was super exciting to see Kodiak Cakes do super well, and they got acquired, and like they had a really good exit out of it. Like it was just like that kind of stuff is so exhilarating to me. It's like I had a small part to play in that trajectory where I was able to like put a little bit of a push up the hill on that like massive milestone. And that's just like, for me, that's so gratifying and so exciting.
Well, and when you really get those products that are so exciting, like you just they sell themselves and you get to highlight it in the best way.
Yeah.
Like it's
so
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Purple, amazing product. Like Lumi deodorant, amazing product. Yeah, same thing with Chapbooks. Chapbooks I still subscribe to. Nate and Vanessa, you're still getting $30 out of me every month.
I still have mine.
Yeah,
I have like a whole stack.
Yeah, but that's the best when you get good products that sell themselves combined with good advertising, good commercial work, good like writing, good ads. It's like magic. Anyway, so I think like all this to say is like the process of getting a winning campaign has changed a little bit, or how to construct one has changed quite a bit in the last 10 years or 12 years since we started working together. But I think those core principles of like the fundamental sales elements, like we were talking about amongst our different campaigns that we've worked on, they're all kind of there in one form or another. There's those commonalities.
In the big ideas and the little ideas and big scope.
They're all there. Like, it's because that's what persuades people when you've got a good product to give it a try and get someone to bite the bullet and buy something. And I think the other thing that is in common with that is like testing is so imperative. And the difference between if you just go out with your baseline assumptions, like you did back in the old days where you just shipped it off to the, your media agency that bought your TV, compared to now where we can validate those findings and create meaningful difference and variety in what we're testing in intros and like what the different like videos look like. There's so much to unlock in potential and performance that like it's hard, but that's where you get wins. That's where you can outcompete other people in your space, is when you go that extra effort to give those variations, the time they need and testing that they need to see which ones rise above everything else.
I love when you test messages beforehand, and then those top ones you incorporate in the ad, and you're saying, okay, these are the heavy hitters. Let's start with these.
Let's go with these.
Or you're doing a ton of small ads, and you're like, oh, we can do one off this concept or that concept. So that's a plug for message testing, which I love.
And I think they're all just tools we're using in a digital age to validate the advertising and get it to fly and get it to just cruise, because that's what we really want for our clients, is them to just excel and create, go gangbusters, right?
Yeah, scale so that, totally.
So anyway, the moral of the story is everything's changed, but nothing has changed. Variation and good sales copywriting.
It's all the same, but everything's different.
Everything's different. But testing, you got to test. Got to test. Well, thanks, Kaitlin.
Yeah.
This has been great.
It's good working with you.
Should we do a real handshake?
Sure.
Until next time.
Until tomorrow.
Thanks, Kaitlin.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Raising Unicorns!
Subscribe now.